Hi everybody, my name is Tom Chesterton. I'm the Managing Director of Tonic. We're a brand consultancy in London. This is episode 7 of TonicWith, and I am really enjoying putting these little shows together. We were surprised actually by the number of people who would start watching these shows when we started. Obviously what we wanted to do was to bring some of the interesting conversations we were having with people to life. So far we're reaching about 1,000 people with every show, and across 10 countries. So if this is the first one of these that you're watching, welcome. If not, then what we're going to try and do is follow the same structure as we usually do by meeting somebody interesting, talking a little bit about who they are and what they do, and how the person behind the professional really adds value to the way that they approach hiring new people for their business. So just want to say thanks very much for tuning in. Hope you enjoy the show. There's one a week, so we'll hopefully see you soon too. But anyway, first things first. So we ought to say hello to Maria Floud, who is on the other end of the line. Hi, Maria.
Hello, Tom.
Do you want to do a little bit of an intro to yourself? What do you do at the moment? What's your current role?
Yes. So I head up the training recruitment team at Grant Thornton. And I've been here at Grant Thornton for 12 years. 12 years? That's a lie already. 6 years. I've been in the industry for 12 or 13 years. But I basically oversee how we hire 400 trainees, so grads, interns, school leavers and placements into about 25 locations. And I look at the brand and the selection part of the journey.
Okay. And so the interesting thing is that people might well be watching this at some point in the future. So for us, at the moment, it's September, it's 2014, but for those people who are watching it at some other time in some other year, hello. But you're about to go into your busy season, I guess, of going on campus.
Yeah, we are. So there's three major things just about to happen for us. In 2 days' time, I'm technically very old, so it's my birthday. I'll be 38, and that's just interesting only because I'm trying to juggle not being at work. Another thing that happens is on Monday we open our applications for a whole new cohort for our 2015 joiners. And then the third thing that happens is, as part of that, we're launching video assessment across all of our trainee hiring. So we're currently knackered trying to pilot for all our candidates to know that it would be all right for 2,500 candidates in 2 or 3 weeks' time.
Well, so first things first, happy birthday. I am 2 years older than you, and that one in about a month. So I don't know how I feel about that just yet. It's meant to be all right, but we'll see how it goes anyway.
Yeah.
But also, good luck with the next few weeks. That sounds like a heavy workload. Do you one of the things that I'm really interested in is the person who sits behind the professional. So I think the last time that you and I spent a good deal of time together was around a campfire at Recruit Stock.
Yes.
That's kind of where we'd been on committees and stuff together, but first time I really ever met you properly, I guess. And I don't know whether you want to give a bit of a heads up on who you are outside of work and what motivates you, what drives you.
Yeah, so I live, all right, so I'm a wife, a mother, not quite in that order. I'm a big traveller, I love travelling, and I was just saying to Tom just before this that this is my first time of being settled for the longest periods of not having a holiday. In terms of facts, I live just north of Brighton. About 9 months ago I moved out of Brighton to live in the country, so I now am a first-time buyer. I'm quite old to be a first-time buyer, but finally we've succumbed, and so that's what's going on for me right now, is totally ingrained with trying to understand how to add value on a house. So the big game we're playing is how can you add 90 grand onto a house within 2 years. Yeah, and you know, so most of my research is coming from intensive catch-up TV.
So Maria's telling me also she doesn't have television, so tell us more about that.
So many people over the years have offered us a TV because they think it's because we can't afford a television. But actually, Dave and I, my husband, when we went travelling a few years ago, we had a couple of year career break where we went volunteering and ended up running a beach lodge, which was phenomenally different experience trying to run an eco lodge in the rainy season with 20 staff. But anyway, and we had all the dog we had.
Yeah.
And I know. Amazing. Anyway, so I've totally taken myself off track by thinking about that dog. So when we came back from that, though, we'd gone from living in a village where the electricity got turned off every 5 days, volunteering. And then when we got back, we were kind of like, well, we're going to set up our life how we want it. And it was kind of, what do we opt in rather than what are the defaults? And so we were just like, well, do you know what? TV isn't one of the things that we want to opt in and have us influenced by. So that's why we don't have a TV. However, we do watch Catch Up, and I am actually starting to like X Factor, and I do feel a bit excluded by people talking about it quite a lot. So, we're just like picking and choosing, and it's quite nice because in the new house you don't have to have the orientation anyhow you towards TV.
Yeah.
Randomly.
Yeah, very true, very true.
Yeah.
So, one of the things you just said, which I thought was quite interesting, was most people, when they buy their first place, are kind of so overcome by owning their first place, they don't really think about anything else. But you talked about kind of almost having this plan around, I want to add so much value within so much time. That's a very, does that suggest that underneath everything you are very strategically orientated in your personal life as well as your professional life?
Strategic, yes, and
goal driven.
Really goal driven, yeah. So I know they can be collapsed, but I've never really wanted to be married, and I never really wanted to own a house. And when people kept doing it around me, I just it didn't really inspire me. Anyway, so after we had our travelling piece, though, that's when we started choosing and realising, actually, I think I was 30 and that was just before joining Grant Thornton, actually. And then it was like, if you could create your life anyhow you wanted it, what would you do? And that's when we moved to Brighton as well, as I mentioned. But I think I'm always in the big game, and it's always like, what's your higher purpose of what you're trying to do? Like, if I think about the house, it's not interesting having my own house at all. Like, I don't care whether it's a mortgage or not, and I don't really relish security. I relish freedom, and I think that's in my work life as well, and why I really, this is the first place I've ever stayed this long. My career to date has been like 2 years, at Anderson, then EY and Deutsche, and I'd always be looking to move on, but actually having that kind of goal where you can have your whole self work in your work life is really interesting for me.
Okay. Yes. So some employers talk about being able to bring the whole of yourself to work, and it sounds like you were kind of there, but from the other end before you made the decision about what you were going to do.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I remember my boss keeps reminding me of like the first few weeks when I joined 6 years ago. I did have an amazing tan, admittedly, because I was 2 years away, but she keeps reminding me that I kept saying, surely I'm going to meet the really difficult clients soon. and I kept saying, the more I just say my opinion, the more people really, really respond, and like the more honest I am, the more people connect. So so I've kind of found that actually maybe that's when, I don't know, is that when you get a real fit, or is that when you're in this environment that really works for you, I guess?
I don't know. I think one of the things that I was talking with somebody when I was leaving my last role, and I said, look, we were having a couple of glasses of wine, and this is kind of where it all comes out, I guess. And she said to me, look, I've learned more about you in the last couple of hours than I had done in the years before, and it's kind of that. You should never be afraid to bring all of who you are to that's what people respond best to.
Yeah. I
think that's so true, and I think that maybe there comes a point in your career where you go, oh, actually, it doesn't really matter what other people think. I'm just going to do what I think is right, and that's where you start becoming much more authentic.
Yeah. I think the thing is the authenticity for me is like such a huge point you're making there. I think the only difference I have is that I probably don't really look at what's right or wrong in a way, but more kind of, like a lot of our brand stuff talks about instinct and reason. And so I think we're always, and there's a lot of work that we're doing on the visioning and stuff, and I really like it for me personally, because I've used it outside of work as well, where you're kind of saying, well, look at the left side of your brain, like the logical analytical data side, but also look at that right, the instinct, and and for me at the moment, looking at candidates, I'm kind of like, well, the right is kind of the gut instinct on whether they'll work for us or be happy here, and the left is like, does it add up on the competencies and that sort of stuff, which is quite interesting. But I think, I don't know, maybe I'm just lucky enough to have people around me who want you also to thrive. And if I think, I'm just like really honest, and I don't want people being here who aren't going to thrive in my team, really, do I? So I love hiring for my team. We're hiring a couple of people at the moment, and I'm just like all over it, and I've got to be careful because my managers, people who work for me are like, real, but I'm just so interested in people's motivations.
But isn't that funny why, so lots of people think about recruiting as being, pain, it's kind of last minute, it's reactive, it's difficult, it's taking you away from, for a lot of line managers, it's taking you away from your day job, frankly. And they see it as being difficult and, almost a distraction. Whereas actually it's a really good opportunity to bring in some really new ideas and some really interesting people. So if you think about it from that perspective, it gives you a completely different take on what talent acquisition is all about.
Yeah, I think it depends if you're coming from performance or versus potential, doesn't it, sometimes as well. Like I love tapping in, like I recruited one person from a main competitor like a year ago to cover a maternity cover for me, and at the time she was quite clearly like recruiter process driven, okay. And for me that's not what floats my boat or my team's boat, really. Like, you have to do your job, but it's a given that we'll be near hitting our targets, and it's not what you do, it's the how you do it stuff. And so when I recruited her, it was like, right, well, I'm only going to recruit her if we absolutely put people in place to give her this behavioural support, change, shift. And like, the balance for me and the challenge, and maybe answers on a postcard, is like in the middle of your season and be focused on like what you're trying to deliver, your targets for your business. So this, everyone's got regional alliances with their business. How can you be that, but then also have your head up enough to like, connect with the rest of your team or what the market's doing? How can you, whereas a lot of people in our game, I think they're like, I'll get to that networking stuff, or I'll get to that bit after I've hit my targets, and I'll get to that bit afterwards. And I think that's the main shift for us, is definitely trying to kind of say, well, it's the how at the same time as dealing with the what. Yeah,
and I'm with you, absolutely.
I don't know.
Interesting. I think more people should share that view, actually. I think that would change the way that business works altogether, actually. I think it's a much more humane way of thinking about the world.
Yeah. I think in one way, though, Tom, I am quite a competitive person, so I love it when I go to these seminars and I find that people aren't doing that in a way. Like, as an inspirational person, like trying to be inspirational for my team, it's great. And I'd like everybody to have done the cool things that we've done with lifting the academics, for example, with grads, and not having that minimum criteria. But at the same time, my job's so much easier when other people are short-sighted.
Yeah.
So, it's a balance, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is, absolutely. I think there's a well-trodden circuit of people who are doing are talking the same stuff that's been taught for a long time, doing the same things that have been done for a long time, and I'm not sure that's reflective of the way that we all work and live our lives anymore. I think it's interesting to see how long that circuit continues for. But I guess there's a logical flow on in terms of questions for that. So where do you get your inspiration from?
It's a good question, and I was thinking about this around like who I aspire to be like, I guess, in a way. And I actually come from a background where I don't think I can remember very many role models. So so the strong people that I remember, it's going to sound terrible, but I like Margaret Thatcher and Richard Branson, right? Okay. So, pinch of salt here about Margaret Thatcher, but at the same time, I basically liked that she was a strong woman and that she looked smart, even though it wasn't quite my style. Yeah. And then in terms of Richard Branson, I love that he came from like my background, which is like I come from quite a working class background. It's not properly down the pit kind of working class, but it's properly, I was lucky if I was going to become a teacher or a nurse, or really lucky if you're a teacher.
Yeah.
And so I guess I was lucky that I followed a friend to university and was like the first person in my family to go to university. And then I got really inspired by other people there and what they were going on to do.
Okay.
And then now I'm really I'm married up blatantly. I'm married up, like, really nice guy who's quite nice, and we've got really sort of lovely, wholesome, authentic people around us. And then in work we've got some quite inspirational leaders, which is nice, but again, there's no one perfect, is there? It's like, I love that person because she's really strong, or I like this person because they're inspirational, or this person because they're really, really credible, So I don't know if that quite answers your question, but...
Oh, no, it does. It does really. I mean, I big hair and shoulder pads aside, I can see what you're talking about. I think it's the... there's a well-known saying, which I have no idea who it's attributed to, but it's somebody said, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I kind of think that... So, and I think the theory goes that you can control who you are by controlling the people who you spend time with, if that makes sense. So, the influence is you get inspired by the people who you spend more time with. So maybe that's where that comes from. Yeah,
nice. I really like that.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? I wish I'd come up with it, but I didn't.
I know, you could totally make some money out of that, Tom.
Did you reckon? Yeah. Maybe one day. So, one of the questions that I've got on my sheet, which I do like to ask the most of, is in 2 parts, really. So, the first thing is, not everybody's career is linear, so it's not always an upward path to success. And over the 12 years that you mentioned you've been in what we might call an industry, I guess, there must have been some ups and downs in that. So, is there something that, if you had your time again, you'd do differently?
Yeah, I think when I was at
dreadful interview questions that nobody wants to answer, right?
No, I love these they're so much more interesting, aren't they, than like tell me the best thing about your career, like whatever. So the thing I'd probably do different is when I worked at EY, actually. So I think I was 2 years into my career, sort of between 2 and 4 years I was there into my career, and after graduating. And I basically started off working for someone who was really inspirational, but then ended up working for someone who was my total opposite.
Okay.
And I found her just incredibly difficult to work with. And so when I say my opposite, I don't know if you've done your insight stuff, about your colours and what your natural preferences are on Myers-Briggs, but I'm like really, really yellow and red, which means sort of talkative and very goal-driven.
Okay, right.
Surprise. And she's incredibly, and this person I was working for is incredibly data-driven and analytical, reflector, theorist, and I'm an activist, goal, I need it now, I'm quite impatient.
Okay.
So I suppose how I would do it, so anyway, so what I found challenging was obviously working for her on a daily basis, but then feeling like I was doing a good job, because I'd do stuff and I'd be like, I transformed some things there and like had a huge success in a way, but potentially it wasn't acknowledged because it wasn't a success in her eyes. And I think what I'd do if I could do it differently was just respect what she could teach me rather than actually make her wrong.
Okay.
And make it into that right and wrong thing, where you do say actually, oh, she just doesn't actually get it. Which is kind of how I saw it at the time. But remember, I was like a bolshy 24-year-old.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably one of the biggest things. And reflecting now, when I read that question, it was like, well, what am I doing now that I put in place? Like, how am I? I've got someone in my team who's actually that type, like data analytical reflector. And like, given that I'm the opposite, I'm quite tricky manager for her. So I guess that's the bit that we're working through actually now, and I've just bought her a free lunch to try and basically do my way of like bribing her to like me. But we get on really well, but it's like, how can I motivate her and have her see. She says I'm inspirational, but at the same time, I don't give her everything she needs. So that's the bit that I'm. I guess, yeah. Does that answer your question? But that's the bit that I'd probably change.
Yeah, it does, and I think if I haven't done the colours thing, but I have done things like MBTI and looking at strengths and stuff. And I guess if I were to do the colours thing, I would probably guess that I'm fairly yellow-red as well. And I think that one of the things that you learn quite early in your career is actually that you can't you're not always right. Actually, no matter how passionate about that stuff you are, you're never 100% right all the time. And to learn to understand how different personality types fit together to make a really good team. And that's
definitely.
It takes time to learn that.
Yeah, and I think that coupled with people who need to go on a journey is really, really powerful. It's like, rather than assess how much of that 100% I want to be right, it's like I can see when people are gonna and what they're gonna, because you've been in it so long, in this game so long, despite I had that two-year career break, but you're kind of like, you can kind of see where they're going to go down, but you have to also let them make their mistakes, and that's when I know I'm sounding like an old mum.
Yeah. Yes.
Even though my boy is only like 2, that's when I'm sounding like an old hat, basically.
Yeah. Yes. No, I know that feeling. It's okay, go and make your own mistakes and come back and I'll help you to get it right in the
long. Do you know what? The most inspirational context that I got over working is like, is that I know I can fix anything. I can absolutely nail anything, and through mostly communication and how to connect with people, I can fix any. So what's the problem with not letting stuff happen, And that was really freeing for me a couple of years ago when I got that. Yeah. And I think people were so worried about doing stuff wrong.
Yeah.
That they maybe don't have that.
Okay, and I guess so the follow-on question I was going to ask you was what's the thing you're most proud of? But in its own right, that change from being that bolshy 24-year-old to the person you are now.
To a bolshy 38-year-old.
Yeah, well, is no bad thing in its own right. Is that the thing that stands out? Is that the thing you're proudest of, or is there something else?
Well, I think no, I think the biggest thing technically I'm proud of is creating my own team from nothing. So when I joined 6 years ago with Grant Thornton, there was 30 people trying to do graduate recruitment as part of their wider HR role, and my job was to try and come in and say, well, do we even have one selection process, or what's our brand look like and stuff. And we had 2,500 applications in total for the UK. So and no one really knew who Grant Thornton was. When I was in the Big Four, actually, I didn't even know who Grant Thornton was. So just to be honest, and I think the main shift and the thing I'm proud of is kind of working with my director and creating what our team should look like, but not in terms of just structure, but in terms of behaviour as well.
Okay.
And that's what I'm really proud of, is that I've actually got a team who every single person is really, really proud of our team and love our team. And that's, I think, creating a space where people can be themselves is like a refreshing thing. So I think that's probably my biggest achievement.
Okay.
In how it feels. But then maybe coming back after maternity leave a year and a half ago, I've got more connected with the personal side rather than all the target side. I think I've shifted a bit since maternity leave, really.
Okay. I think my experience of being a parent is that does change your outlook on life and on the world in general. It can't help but have an impact on how you work on a day-to-day basis as well. And I've not met anyone it's not had a good effect on, particularly us yellow-red people, right?
Particularly
us yellow-red people.
Oh yeah, us talkative people.
Yeah, exactly right.
Goal-driven talkative people.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's definitely something I've learned most about myself over the last probably nearly 9 years is how being more empathetic changes the way that you do business. I think it's really important.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I were looking at the challenges that are facing recruiters, actually that's not a bad, an unplanned, but it's a good segue into what I was going to ask you next, which is that our access to information and our access to data as people is a lot greater than it used to be. I was listening to this thing actually on Radio 4 the other morning. It was on the Today programme about how everybody's perception is that Gen Y or millennials, whatever we're calling them, they don't watch television in real time. And actually, there's a link here to what you were talking about earlier on. But the person who was being interviewed said, actually, yes, they do, but the only thing they watch is news in real time. And live television is actually really important, because then they've got something to talk about in real time on social media, which is quite an interesting take on the world. So, which I hadn't really thought about. But for me, one of the biggest challenges is really about how do you, particularly with graduate recruitment, is how do you keep up with how people are changing, and how do you become the person who's having a direct person-to-person relationship almost with the people that you want to hire, rather than it being business to candidate, which is a bit discreet and distant and doesn't really play anymore. So I just wondered what your take on the challenges that graduate recruiters particularly are going to face over the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, around so you're saying about, staying relevant for them and current and giving them something to talk about. And I think, in my view, for the next 5 years, and something we're starting to shift, but it's going to become more relevant, is like, how do you move a machine of recruitment? We're like not always well-oiled, but like a machine of, now we get 10,000 applications. How do we move that into, like you and I know, is before we used to call it personal touch, right? And it's changing now. So, but I think for me, a particularly big number of recruiters is like, how can we make it individual and personal for people when you're doing mass marketing? And we've never had, good or bad, we've never had the budget to do spray and pray.
Yeah.
But so the thing we're trying to do is trying to be smart and kind of saying, well, actually, before it was about, here are the channels, whereas now we're sort of saying, well, what do the different people want at different points? Well, why don't we stop predicting what they want and giving it to them, and actually just give them the forums to be able to ask? So that's why a few years ago we did the Spilling the Beans initiative, which is our trainee blog, and basically we completely shifted. And for large professional services, our competitors thought we were crazy, but we basically handed it over to our trainees to create our social media strategy, and they run it. Like, we don't do approvals, we don't have our agency doing it. We do work with them on strategy, big picture, but really we hand it over to them to work that out. And I think that was an example of giving a channel, like, obviously, let's not bother talking about social media, but that was a whole way of doing it. And now we're talking about, well, what are we giving our candidates as a channel? So actually talking about building communities. So you're not actually trying to get it right for the candidate anymore, but you're just giving them the channels to have people. Like, we're talking about how can they have access to recruiters directly, not 24 hours, but if they want a question, they're not going to scan and search for it more than once and for 10 seconds, and if it doesn't come up, they're going to email or call, or probably not call. But so we're looking at things like that. And then I just mentioned to you that the piloting of the video stuff, I was really, it's quite amazing after 13 years to get moved by a candidate. And that sounds stupid, but how many of those grads that you see talking about going on their expedition, carrying a bag for someone who's broken their back, whatever. So, and you become a little bit immune. But yesterday I started reviewing these videos, and the first person was just like amazing to see that they're actually people, right? So I think for me, it's like in the next 5 years, it's actually looking at the whole person and how do you make it an individual process for 10,000 candidates, I think, or for however many you get, because there's people who could do it with only 200 candidates and don't do it anyway. So, so for me, that's probably the bit that's really interesting. Like when I saw these guys on these videos, and the development we're going to put in is like, make sure question one, we really like get to know the person, similar to you, I guess, and what you're doing, get to know the person behind the candidate.
Yeah.
And how can you chill them out so that they are enjoying the new experience as well.
Yeah.
But it's really amazing having them bring it to life and seeing more than what they would answer on even a telephone interview.
Yeah, and I think that's something that everybody could learn from, actually, is that, that it's really easy to forget that you're dealing with people at the end of the day. There is an individual at the other end of a CV or a phone call or an email or whatever, and I think that it's very easy to get bogged down in that I've got a funnel of candidates who are all coming through. These are the people who I'm going to see, and I need a conversion ratio of 4 to 1 to get through line manager and blah blah blah. But you're forgetting that there are real people at the other end of the spectrum who are just wanting to do a job, actually.
Yeah, and I think the amount that we can give to them, like so many of them, I kept wanting, this is probably being a sad mum as well, but many of them I'm like, I want to give a call and like give coaching to them. I want to just like help them on their way, and I think I got reconnected with why I went into this in the first place, which was to give people jobs. Right. And then you actually find a couple of years into it, it's like, well, obviously 9,600 of my people are going to get rejected. Yeah. So actually, what trace can you leave them that can enable them? We did some work in our team actually to say what we're up to as our game, like what's our big game that we're up to. I mentioned earlier, and we landed on, we don't all have to have the same game, like we don't have to all agree on the team are up to this, but it was everybody was describing that we're up to creating experiences. And that was really inspirational, because if I'm up for creating experience, what about isn't that quite different to only prioritising the people that I need? And I kind of said to the team, well, I'm like this as well, but just consider that what you're doing is moving forward with your list of your people you need for the next stage, and all these people are like falling to the wayside. And what's their impression? And they want it relevant. They're going to tell everybody how many people they're going to tell about the experience. But actually, what's our integrity with what they experience, rather than being bothered about what they're saying about us for brand? So that was coming into our world around robust hiring plus creating experiences for our business and our candidates. Yeah, and I absolutely couldn't agree with you anymore. I think that what you just said is really, really powerful. I think that's absolutely crystallized around the way that recruiting happens in the future if it's done well. One of the things that I've talked about a little bit is a concept called utility, which I've called kind of help marketing as an aid memoir, but it's really the idea is that you act as the person or the organisation that provides an environment where people can go and get help. With whatever that might be. It might be about their career or their life or whatever. It could be about just connecting with other people. So you're providing the environment where the experience is really good, because those people you don't end up hiring, you want them to feel positively about you as well, and that's very much tied in with what you've just been talking about. Yeah, sounds good. So I'm just going to draw things to a close, because I think we've covered loads of really valuable things. Put the world to rights. Yeah, well, that's exactly what I want to get out of these things. I think these are. I think that's been a really, really insightful and really interesting conversation. So thank you. I think one of the questions I was going to ask you was which employers do you think are doing what you are trying to do really well? But I think actually you've described the fact that Grant Thornton are doing what you're trying to do really, really well. So congratulations. We're trying. Yeah. So maybe let's finish with, have you got anything that you think would be particularly inspirational for people who are just about to go out on campus like you are, about to live out of a suitcase for a couple of months and engage with people about great careers and the things that they have to offer? What's the thing you'd leave them with right now? I think I would encourage everyone to probably just be present, have every single conversation matter, and act like it matters, rather than scanning people on your horizon for people for us and talent spotting and goal orientated and filtering, and probably I don't worry anymore about my 400 emails in my inbox. I don't worry about whether I'm going to hit my target. don't tell my business, but you know, I don't worry about it, because all I know is that in every moment of conversation, I'm just interested in having a quality conversation where hopefully I might be able to help or inspire or influence people. So I remember when I used to be on campus all the time, and there's definitely, like, you know, not in our team now, but you definitely kind of say who in the team would be crying by January, you know, that was more in banking. You know, just how serious it all is and it all feels, and just remember that it all comes down to just what you say and tiny conversations that matter, rather than, you know, the whole big responsibility. I don't know, probably not the most articulate answer, but
I thought it was great.
You know, enjoy every second.
Well, and it only comes around once as well, right? So you only have one opportunity to talk to people, so you might as well enjoy it. There's worse things you could be doing, right?
Well, exactly. Actually, that's probably the thing to leave, right, Tom, is like, just get that you choose this. Like, you know, a lot of people, do you choose to work for a living? Well, actually, you have a choice. Like, do you choose to live in your house where you do? Do you choose your family? Do you choose them? And if you've got your family or you've got your family, you still got to choose it, right? So it's kind of like I actively choose my life to be like this. So potentially every moment I'm like, I'm choosing to have this conversation and to create something out of it. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought, listen, thank you so much for your time. I think it's a fantastic insight in there in terms of being mindful. I love the idea about being present in terms of what you're doing. If I was on a team, I'd want to be on Team Flood. Go Team Flood.
Yay! Yay! Not sure my husband says that all the time, but you know.
Thank you, though. Really appreciate your time today. And for everybody who's watching, I just want to say thanks very much for tuning in. We'll have links to some of the things that we've talked about in the notes for this episode. Hopefully you've enjoyed that as much as I have. Thanks again, Maria.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for asking me. Pleasure, as always.
And hopefully see you soon. But in the meantime, hopefully get a chance to tune into the next one. Thanks, everybody. Bye now.
Thanks, Tom. Bye.